Hey guys, my name is xOctoManx and this is the first part of my new tutorial series about how to create a Diablo style game in Unity 3D. Or actually in 3D, we're gonna create some kind of isometric view into the game. We will start today with the main navigation. So we want to click somewhere in our game and move to that position. And when we are hitting an enemy, we want to go in some kind of, let's say, attacking state. And when we are unclicking this one or clicking somewhere else, we're gonna walk to another position. So this is a Patreon supported tutorial series, so if you want to support me on Patreon as well, feel free to do so on patreon.com/xOctoManx. Okay, so let's get started. The first one is I want to create a ground. We need any 3D object as a ground. It can be a terrain, it can be a plane, it can be a quad, it doesn't matter as long as we have something where we can navigate on. So I'm gonna go over and create a plane since it's rather small and we can actually go in and scale this one up and down. If you want to use a terrain, you can also use this one so you can actually draw in anything you like and please. But I don't want to go into that because it's going to rob me more time than I actually want. Maybe I go in and do that stuff later on so we can keep or we actually get stuff more interesting. But since this is going to be a rather long series, I want to keep it as simple as possible, well, at least for the moment. So I'm gonna go and reset this little plane in here. So what I want is I want to navigate on that plane. I want to avoid obstacles while I'm going to do so. Because in Diablo or in a Torchlight and whatever all the games are called, you have the same possibilities as well. So when there's a stone in the center and you want to go with your character around the stone, you just click somewhere wherever you want to go. And that's what we are going to build today at the very beginning. So to keep things clean up, I might want to go in and create some empty game object as placeholder, for example, for the environment or for anything. We might go into that one later on as well. So we're gonna keep also a structure where we keep all the things organized. For example, if you're gonna create an empty game object in here, you can always go and reset its position and draw anything else. We don't need that, but what you can do is you can maybe use a hashtag or any other symbol in the beginning, and we can call this one environment. So what you actually can do with such a game object is when you are placing our plane as a child of it and you disable environment, you can always go in and deactivate all the child elements inside to keep the hierarchy as clean as possible, and we can actually shrink stuff together or not. So also when I want to go in and create maybe another cube in here, which I want to have maybe as a stone in the center so I can actually avoid this one, then I can do so. I make this one maybe 3 by 3 big, so it's somewhere in our screen and we have something to navigate around. In the first place, I'm gonna stay with that kind of prototyping, and later on I will go and import some 3D models, as the Patreon who was requesting this one is requesting as well. So we're gonna do that while we are creating all that stuff in here as well. So what I want to do for now, since this is still the prototyping state, I want to create a materials folder, and in this I just gonna go in and create some materials, well, actually with some colors, so I can determine and see where the ground is, where the obstacle is, and where my player maybe is, or an enemy, and so on. So I created a new material in here. You don't need to. I just call this one maybe green and just go into the albedo channel for this one and change this one to somewhere greenish for my ground. I can actually go into my plane and just drag this one in. Maybe I'm gonna do this one as a brown. So create another material called brown, and I choose somewhere in the orange piece in here, maybe like that. So, and I go in and drag this one on this. So, okay, we see there is something, and we can do the same with the player. So I create a player object. You can use, again, your 3D model already, but I'm gonna start with a cube or sphere or whatever, or a cylinder to, yes, see what's actually doing, and later on we're gonna change this. So gonna reset this one and maybe set this one over here. What I also want to make sure is that I rename this one to player already. It doesn't really matter. And I want to set the height of it to maybe 0.5. If this is not working later on with the navigation mesh, which we are going to use, I could even create an empty game object as a child, or no, as a parent of it. So this would be actually my player object, and this one is going to be the mesh actually, or the cube once again. So I can drag the cube onto the player and do all that stuff directly on the player if I like to. So I would have the cube would be over here in this, at the height of 0.5, but the player itself would be at the height of 0, or usually it should. So let's try this once again. No, this is not, so I'm gonna reset the player to 0. I'm gonna do the same for the cube. Reset. Now I make the cube part of the player, and the player needs, the cube needs to have a lift on the y-axis to 0.5. So now this one is zeroed out. I can drag this one all around. I can also check this one when I go to the local axis. I usually should be able to see the height of the pivot point, and now you can see the pivot is on the ground. So I can actually use the pivot on the ground to manipulate the walking around. Also, what you want to make sure is when you're using this technique that the z-axis, which is the blue one in here, is showing or is going forward from, or actually currently from the camera away. Because the forward axis is actually there where the face is going to be, like a nose when you want to do that. We can also duplicate the cube in here, and I just go over and drag this one in here, maybe shrink this one down and pass this one somewhere here, maybe like that, just to see where the front of my player is. So this is basically nothing else than just showing me, okay, this is the nose of the player, which we are, actually later on don't need, since we are going to get a mesh, an animated mesh or animated character inside the game anyways. Okay, so now since we have done this one, I might want to create an enemy. So we don't go into the attacks today, but what I want to make sure is that we have the possibility to do something, or actually recognize, okay, there is an enemy. We're gonna be able to click on the enemy. We lock this enemy in, and after we have locked this guy in, we're gonna be able to go towards him, chase him, whatever. You please and like, of course. I believe this needs to be a height of 1. We're gonna pass this one over here, and again we could also go and tint this one into red, but this is actually a good scene, so this is going to be my enemy for now. Or actually, let me do that again as I did with the player. So I'm gonna create a cylinder, a game object, an empty one in here, drag this one out and reduce the size to, or the height, the y-axis to 0, and then drag this one back in. So this is now the enemy. So it doesn't really matter where the enemy is currently looking at. Again, it's going to do the same as the other one. It's looking upwards or in the forward axis, which is that axis in here. It's the same as the world axis, so that's pretty cool. And we don't need to do anything for the moment for the enemy or with the enemy. So the next one is we want to make a navigation mesh. So this object in here needs to be static as well as this one. So and also we need to see where and how can we set this one up. So what we need to do at first is we need to see a new window, and it's called navigation. And usually it's popping up next to the inspector itself, so you can pop in or actually switch in between the inspector and the navigation part. If you want to have that anywhere else, feel free to drag this around. And what we can now do is we can actually select the objects we want to affect, and we can, once we have selected those and they are highlighted as you can see right now directly in the environment piece in here, we can set those two objects to be navigation static. Also, what you want to do is you don't want to make this cube walkable, so you can actually set this one to not walkable. By the way, I'm using Unity 5.6, so this might have changed a bit in code side and also maybe inside the pieces in here, since the navigation mesh had a big update, I believe. And once we have done that, we can actually bake those. So when we're baking this, he is telling us, hey, save the scene before you're actually creating a navigation mesh. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna create a new folder in here. I'll just call this one maybe scenes. And in this scene, I just have a demo scene, and that's it. And now you can see it created a navigation mesh for us, which is that bluish overlay in here. And depending on whatever we are going to pass over as the agent radius, for example, and the agent height, the navigation mesh is going to change depending on that. Also, as you can see, since this cube is not walkable, we are not able to go onto it. Otherwise, there would be another navigation mesh part on the top of it. So while the agent radius is set to be 0.5, it would be the half of our current agents we're gonna have, or later on we have. We might go and later on increase or decrease the size depending on the details we're gonna add. So you need to find the right way or the right distances and the right radius to go around all the stuff like trees, walls, and all the other things to look good, and the mesh is not actually interfering the other objects in the scene while walking around. Okay, that's everything basically for the navigation mesh at the moment. And later on, of course, we need to set some agents. At the beginning you will have a humanoid agent type. You can always go in and change the values in here, but we'll go into that in a moment as well, no matter what. Okay, so on our player we want to make sure that this player, I'm gonna switch back to the inspector. On our player I want to have a script which is taking care of the navigation inside the navigation mesh. So we're gonna go in and create a new folder at first in the assets folder, of course, and this of course is our scripts folder. You can always split the scripts folder as well later on into systems folders and so on. We're gonna go and do that while we are in the systems and while we are creating all that pieces in here. And this is going to be a new C# script. I'm gonna code everything in C# in here because that's my favorite language. And this is going to be a click to move script. So we're gonna click and move, and of course we can also call later on the attack pieces and attack parts when we are actually attacking somebody. Okay, what we need to do is onto our player we want to drag this click to move piece. Also we need a nav mesh agent directly on it. If you are not able to find this, just type in nav and just take the nav mesh agent for this one. We're gonna go into that in a moment as well. And maybe you want to have later on a specific collider, maybe a box collider, a sphere collider, or a capsule collider for you maybe. So you can actually later on go in and pass the correct collision data inside. It's not crucial at the moment, but make sure you have any piece of collider at the moment. So when we are opening up the nav mesh agent, we have the agent type. Currently we are human, which is the first one we just have inside the agent's type. If it's empty for you, just create a new one, give it a name, a radius, and so on and so forth. And also in the scene you can see Currently it has a height of 2. Since a cube is a height of 1, our current agent has a height of 2. Usually it should be. So we can go in and change the height of that of that navigation agent to any size we actually want, and we can also bring this one up and down to whatever our needs are. Okay, going back to the player in here, so we can set the speed of whatever we want this guy to, the walking speed, the angular speed, and so on and so forth, and acceleration. We're gonna go into all of that stuff in a moment anyways. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to open the click to move, the click to move script, open this one up in mono develop, and once it's done, I'm gonna be back. So at first we're gonna have, let me zoom in a bit so you can see stuff better. At first we need some variables which are determining what our current character or player is actually doing, what he has to do, and also we can also split some ideas here and there and give some informations later on back, for example, to the enemy or any other kind of script. So what we want to have is at first a public variable which is of type float, and we want to have an attack distance. As I said in the beginning, we don't go into attack today, but we want to set everything up so we are actually able to do all of that. Another one is the public float, and this is going to be an attack rate. So the rate, how fast the player or character later on is able to attack. Those values later on will be driven by, for example, a sword or a staff or whatever you're gonna equip. But for now we're gonna do that like this. Again, we don't need those, but later on we will, so I already will start to set up everything inside. And we have a lot of private ones now. So the first private one is going to be of type float as well, and I call this one a next attack. This will be automatically later on calculated depending on when the last attack has been. It will be added from the attack rate actually. So the next attack is basically the current time plus the attack rate. Then we're gonna unlock the next attack, and then we can determine an attack actually. Okay. So this is everything about attacks. Now we need some connection to the navigation mesh agent. So this is another private one, and this is of type nav mesh agent. The problem is nav mesh agent. I'm gonna type this one out. Nav mesh agent, which is a name with a small n in the beginning. As you can see, nav mesh agent is not existing in the current context. What you can do is, if you have typed it correct, you can right click and resolve and say see what is using, and in this case it's using the Unity engine.ai namespace. So if you have not added this one, make sure you did, or resolve it as I have done in here. Okay, the next one is, when we are later on going into animations and stuff, we're gonna add an animator component, of course, in our player character, and I call this one just anim. And instead of start, we're gonna use update. We're gonna use awake. So when we are awaking the script later on, we're gonna do some things. I'm gonna get rid of this line. We don't need that. And the next one is everything about the enemy. So what we're gonna have is a private transform, and this is going to be our targeted enemy. So the one we just clicked, if we have clicked it, actually. Then we want to have some testing bools. The first bool is we have actually an enemy clicked, so enemy clicked as a bool. We're gonna change those depending later on what the last input of the player has been. And we have another private one which is of type bool as well, and we call this one walking. So when we are walking, we're gonna set this one to true, otherwise we're gonna set this one to false. And also later on when we go and use the animator component, we are actually able to set the bool directly in the animator as a trigger, or bool actually directly reading from whatever the walking state is, and we go back to idle or in front to the walking animation while we are walking around. Okay, that's everything currently we're gonna need. If you want to have some cool layout later on in your scripts, you might want to add a header. Actually, we don't need to. And we can rename that header to maybe stats or something. We might go in and later on use more headers, so we're gonna be able to sort things out. Don't forget to save often, otherwise Unity might not be happy with you. And when we are checking now the click to move, you can see those that bold text in here, the stats one. And this is the header doing in here. It's taking this and actually organize stuff directly in stats. So when you have a trillion of stats later on, you can always go in and see what you're currently after. So again, attack rate and distance are not, well, actually not at the moment, are not important. We're gonna set the attack distance later on, so we can actually reduce the distance to the enemy. But for now, it's actually not important. So what we want to do in Awake is we want to set anim to be the animator component we currently don't have. So we get the component of type animator. Later on, open close parentheses and close the line with a semicolon, and we're gonna do the same with a navmesh agent. So navmesh agent is going to be equal to a get component, open close those triangle brackets, and inside a navmesh agent with a big N, because that's a type we're gonna request. So what we now do is we need update to actually call and check whatever is happening while we are doing so. To control or actually see where the player is currently clicking at, we're gonna need or use raycasting. So at first we're gonna create a ray, and we call this one just ray, and we're gonna get the camera with a big C dot main dot screen point to ray from the input dot mouse position. So this ray is actually storing where we are currently clicking when we are clicking into our game, and this is later on the position wherever we hit is the position or the destination for the navmesh agent to walk to. We also need the hit, which is of type raycast hit. Just call it hit or whatever you like. And now we go and change the or pass over something when we are inputting. I'm gonna use the right mouse button to actually move around, or in this case, it's everything set it up to fire to. So what we say is input dot get button down, and in open close parentheses we type in, or I type in, fire to. So this is a fire to button. You can always go into the input panel and check what all stuff is set to be fire to. It will be maybe another button as well, not just the right mouse button in this case. So when we are hitting the right mouse button in this case, we want to shoot a raycast from our mouse, or from the mouse position, and see what we are actually hitting. So to do so, we're gonna say if physics dot raycast. So we shoot actually the raycast, and which ray are we shooting? We're shooting the ray we just created, comma. We say out hit, which is the raycast hit, and we maybe set the maximum distance to 1000. You can also set this one to infinite, but I wouldn't recommend this. I just set this one to 1000, which is the distance the ray is able to shoot. You can also set this one to lower, to maybe 100 or something. You need to decide what the best is and how far your camera is going to be away from the playfield or from the terrain or wherever. So all of that depends if it is working or not. If you're not hitting anything because the camera is too far away, you would not actually get any raycast hit in return. So what we now want to test is, we want to test if hit.collider.tag is going to be the same as our enemy. So we now haven't actually created the enemy tag right now. We're gonna go do that in just a second. So, but what do we want to do is, when we are hitting an enemy, we want to set our targeted enemy to hit.transform. Since it's of type transform as well, we might go and change this one later into a game object, which means we're gonna need to change the values in here anyways. Okay, also what we want to make sure is that we set enemy clicked is going to be equal to true. So because when we are hitting an enemy, we of course have clicked an enemy, and later on we can, depending on that, show the health, for example, for the enemy, and we can react to whenever the enemy has been clicked and is going to be true. Else, so if this is not the case and we haven't actually hit an enemy, then we have hit anything else. And usually, of course, the navigation mesh. So what we do is we set walking to be true. We might go in and change some things here and there as well. So at first we're gonna do it like that. So we set enemy has been clicked to be false, since we have not clicked an enemy in this case. And also we want to tell our nav mesh agent to be is stopped. And is stopped is false. So what does it mean is stopped is false means it's going to be true. It's a bit strange. The old version in Unity, or until Unity 5.5, I believe, was resume. But resume now is obsolete, as you can see in here. So instead we're gonna use is stopped to be false. And if stopped is to be true, then of course the nav mesh agent won't run anymore. So when it's false, it will walk. If it's true, it will not walk anymore. Okay, so after this if statement, when we have clicked, actually we want to go to that position and enter or create a new if statement where we actually implement if an enemy has been clicked, we want to react to it. So if enemy clicked is actually true, because we just have hit the correct collider and so on and so forth, we want to call a move and attack function. We're gonna create this in a moment. Also, after that, we want to test if the remaining distance is smaller or equal to the stopping distance of the nav mesh agent. And if it's so, we want to set is walking or walking to false, and vice versa. So what we say is, if the nav mesh agent dot remaining distance is smaller or equal than nav mesh agent dot stopping distance, then we want to set walking to false. The stopping distance is basically the stopping distance you're gonna have in here. If it is set to be 0, then then it's going to be 0. If it's 1, then it's 1, and so on and so forth. And the remaining distance is always the whole time measured in the background. So if this is smaller or equal to that, then we're gonna go in false, and the nav mesh agent will do the rest automatically, depending on if auto braking is on or off. Okay, and what else? And if it's not the case, so else, we want to keep walking to be true. Okie dokie. So again, here we're gonna implement the next function we're gonna create right now. And this is going to be our move and attack function when we are chasing the player. So it's of type void, and we call this one move and attack. No, not this. Open close the curly brackets. And what we want to set is at first, for example, when an enemy dies and is not available anymore on in the scene, for example, we want to check if the targeted enemy is equal to null. So if it is returning null, we're gonna return. So we don't do anything at that point and we don't go further in the function. So, but if it is not null, we want to go into the attacking state, as I already said. So at first we want to chase the enemy. That means we set nav mesh agent dot destination to be equal to targeted enemy dot position. In the next line we want to request if the nav mesh agent remaining distance, as we already have done over here, if the nav mesh agent dot remaining distance is going to be smaller or equal, oh no, in this case gonna do bigger than equal at first, bigger or equal our attack distance we just have set. Whoops. Attack distance. So if it is bigger, the remaining distance is bigger than the attack distance, we want to make sure that our nav mesh agent is walking to the enemy. So nav mesh agent dot is stopped is going to be equal to false. That means he is running, and we set walking to be true. Actually, maybe we can create an else statement in here, or we're gonna create later on another function or other if statement directly under that. So if it's not the case, if it's not like that, then of course it will be smaller than this. Maybe we're gonna do that like this. So it's just it's not bigger or equal, but just bigger than that. And else, so if the remaining distance is smaller the attack distance, we can say we want to look at our enemy. So we say transform dot look at, open close parentheses, and inside it's going to be our targeted enemy. So we look to it. We might have some problems with the looking into or to it later on, but we will fix that when we are encountering this. Then we create a new vector, which is the direction to attack. So I just call this one dire to attack. It's going to be equal to the targeted enemy dot transform dot position. I guess we just need targeted enemy dot position, since transform is not needed, since targeted enemy is of type transform anymore. But later on we might go, as I said before, and change targeted enemy to be a game object, so we don't need to change this one in here. Minus, and this is going to be minus the current transform dot position, so the transform dot position of the player. So this is the direction where we need to attack to. Okay, now we go into the attack interval. So if time dot time is bigger than next attack, we want to make sure that our next attack is going to be equal to time plus our attack rate, as I already said before. Okay, and after we have checked all of that stuff in here, and I believe it might be directly in here or in there. I'm not 100% sure right now. Give me a second. Yeah, I believe that is what we need to pass over here. Is we will need to stop the nav mesh agent at this particular point. So we say is stopped is going to be equal to true. So actually it's stopping to walk, and we're gonna set walking to be false as well. Okay, time to test. So don't forget to save the script, of course, and when you're now in here, don't forget to save the scene if you forgot this one. And maybe I'm gonna go in and change the camera for a moment. You can make an autographic, you can make it just perspective. Actually, it doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure that I see the whole field in here. Just gonna go in and rotate this maybe by 30 degrees to be down. Gonna direct this one up a bit in the global axis in here, and maybe a bit over there. So actually I see everything, and hopefully I can click on all the elements in here. Again, this just for testing purposes. Okay, so before we're gonna start and test everything, I want to create an attack distance for the enemy in here. And also I forgot, of course, to call the move to attack or move and attack function in the if the enemy is clicked part in here. So call the function if the enemy has been clicked. We're gonna move and attack the enemy. So if we have a far range later on, like a bow, which has a higher attack range or attack distance in this case, then we will be further away from the enemy. And if we have a melee weapon in the hand of whatever, then the attack distance will be lower. Okay, and what I also want to make sure is, just for you and for now, I just comment this one out after that, so you need to make sure that you do that, otherwise you get a null reference. What we want to set is, of course, we want to set the we haven't created this one already. We want to create a connection already to our animator component. Later on we create a bool which is called isWalking, and we set this one to whatever walking is, which is again directly in the update function. So every time walking is changing, we're gonna set this this bool to it, and later on the animator will handle the idle states and the walking states for us automatically. But again, I'm gonna comment this one out right now, so I don't get any null references and so on, and I go in and see if there's anything I have missed. But I believe so, it is cool as it is. Let Unity compile everything when we have saved, and let's see if we are able to move around and select the enemy. So as you can see right now, our cube is a slightly bit higher than the ground, and when I right click I should be able to move, but I'm not, since good question. Let's see what the problem is. Oh, I just noticed we forgot to set the destination when we are clicking actually anything at all. So what we want to do is, in here in the first else statement of the raycasting, when we're not hitting anything, we want to say the nav mesh agent dot destination is going to be equal to hit the point. Let's see if we have any problems anywhere else. No, that's okay. So let's test this one out right now. So I'm gonna save the scene pretty quick once again, just to make sure I haven't changed any or not much. We are pressing play now, I'm pressing the right mouse button, you can see our character is moving towards wherever I have clicked. And of course is also avoiding whatever is baked into the navigation mesh. So since the character is kind of car-like right now, I want to change some values in here. At first I want to increase the speed to maybe 10 or 7, should be a great speed, and the angular speed, which is actually the rotation of it, I want to have that one pretty high, so maybe 700. The acceleration should also be pretty high, otherwise it's not instantly walking, and now it's feeling a bit better. So play around with until with all that values until you have something which is good for you. Okay, the only thing is, as you can see, I can walk in straight inside the enemy because we haven't tagged this one already. So what we want to do is we want to tag the enemy base in here as enemy. I already have a enemy in here, so I'm gonna show you how you can tag this one correctly. So let me remove this one as well, and go inside that. I don't know why that is the case in here. Okay, never mind. Okay, they will be removed only when the next time, in the next time the project is loaded. So this is new to Unity 5.6 as well. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add a new tag in here. We set this one to enemy with a big E in the beginning. And what we now can do is we can tag the enemy itself with the enemy tag. So now when we are hitting the enemy, we should be able to not move inside, but as you can see we still are able to, because there is no collision happening on the enemy itself. So we need to add maybe a capsule collider or whatever to our cylinder. The cylinder itself, as you have seen, is not reacting to the capsule collider we just set, and now we're gonna try to push that one once again, and we are still not able to go to it. So what I want to make sure is I want to see if I'm hitting the enemy. So I just print out a little message in here when we are requesting if the collider's tag is enemy tag. So don't forget to save this one and see what's happening when I'm hitting that particular collider. Maybe it's too big or too small, or I don't know. But there is nothing. Okay, here came something that I was hitting an enemy. Maybe the capsule collider is not correctly set it up in here. So yeah, there you can see it's pretty small, so I need to increase the size a bit to maybe like that. And now I should be able to click this one, because now it should react to whatever it is, and it should stop whenever the player reaches the attack distance. In this case it's 5, I believe it's 5 units or 5 meters. We're gonna test this one out. Okay, he says we have hit the enemy, and this is a distance of 5 from now on. The only thing is, it is not doing everything we wanted. Oh, now he is. Okay, let's test this one once again. As you can see, he's sliding into, and then he is facing directly where the enemy is. And since we need a little bit smaller distance, I believe we're gonna start and testing around with the distance of 2. So we're gonna test this one out in here, and if 2 is a bit too close, so not sure if there is something I can do better. So the enemy wasn't hit it. So this is the distance of 3, as you can see, and this would be some kind of goodish distance for a melee attack. That's what I wanted to say. So as you can see, it is also flying around in here, but this is what we're going to take care of later on in another video. Yeah, and in the next part we're gonna see if we actually, yeah, maybe implement some attack animations and all the other things, and maybe yeah, give the enemy some stats and so on and so forth. We're gonna have a lot of stuff to do, of course, but for now I believe that's a pretty good start, so we can actually walk around with our player like in Diablo or any other RPG or action RPGs, and we are able to actually go closer to the enemy and try to attack it with a speed of 7. So I'm gonna go and put this one once again at this point. Go here, we are able to attack. Not sure what the distance was. Oh, I was increasing the distance to 7, so you can see it's only going until that point, and that's it. So again, I hope you enjoyed this one, and yeah, feel free to donate on Patreon as well if you are interested far more into the series. So see you on the next part. Bye bye. Thanks for watching the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thumbs this video up if you like it, and feel free to become my patron or donate by using PayPal to support me and my channel in the future. All links will be below in the description. See you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.